Tepu, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Haru Nefer. This is Qesankh Maat with another exciting video for you. And in this video, we're going to take another look at the Port Neteru, or the Tree of Life, and the cosmological thinking as a framework for relational thinking. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button on this video. If this is your first time to my channel, hit the subscribe bell to get notifications on when I go live and when I upload recorded videos. If you want to know more about my spiritual teachings, you can become a Patreon supporter for as little as $1, $5, or $20 per month. It's up to you. You can cancel at any time. There is never any obligation. So become a Patreon supporter today. Last but not least, share this video with family and friends so that we can get the revolution started. So Grand Rising, Namaste. Let's take another look at the Port Neteru, or the Company of Gods, because I think there's an important element that really needs to be highlighted that speaks to a greater problem with the world in and of itself. I told you in my previous video on this series that black people are predominantly right brain thinkers and white people are predominantly left brain thinkers. And this has really larger implications as to how our world is built, how the paradigm of thinking has been pushed upon the world, which is polarized in left brain thinking. And left brain thinking is to separate, segregate, and to see how things are different. And this gives rise to sexism and racism. While the right brain is congregative in thinking, or synthesis, meaning it looks to see how things are similar and it tries to bring things together to work harmoniously. And what we see in the world is that European society has pushed upon the planet itself left brain thinking. The goal should always be integrated brain thinking, thinking through both the left and right hemispheres of the brain. That brings about an alignment with God, the universe, and so forth. But unfortunately, we have black people who have become victims of white supremacy and slavery are forced to think left brain. And that's not naturally how we think. And just as a note, we all use both hemispheres of the brain, but there is typically a reliance upon one. And again, we rely too much upon left brain thinking that has in it the basis of verbal communication, facts, math, segregative thinking. So the left brain encompasses all of that, and we have to start understanding how the right brain works and why it's important that we incorporate that. So what does this all mean when we start looking at the Tree of Life? Well, the one thing that distinguishes what our ancestors created here from other religions is that our ancestors put together the relationship between the deities as a framework of thinking. Meaning you can't have one without the other. I see all the time a lot of the brothers and sisters praising Maat, talking about how great Maat is, or Harukuhuti, or Haru. But they forget that those deities, or what we can call in relation to the Tree of Life, those faculties have a reliance on one another. So you can't have one without the other. So if you're going to praise Ma'at, you must also look at Tahuti, her mate. And in the story of Asar and Aset, that story itself talks about the relationship. And that's what we're going to discuss here. Because there is a real importance on those relationships. And we can see this in academia, where you have these Egyptologists or these professors who introduce to us how the Egyptians lived and their different monotheistic religion, but they introduce these deities as if they are isolated powers, never with the idea of the reliance on one another. You see, when you are embedded in relational thinking, which is what Maat is, then you understand that the two are necessary for the entire whole to function. That you just can't have one or remove one and thinking the whole can function. That's not how it works. So let's take a quick look at that as it relates to the tree of life. So I'm not going to go in any particular order. I'm just going to talk about them as I see them. Now, if we start looking at Geb at the very bottom of the tree, we can't talk about Geb as being a deity that deals with the earth or the physical world without talking about Amen. So where you have Geb is the physical world, or the physical manifestation of who you are, because that's a lot of what it is. You have to contrast that with Amen, which is the metaphysical manifestation. And this is point zero, which is God, the original state of God, as metaphysical, that which cannot be perceived. You understand? And here you can see it says concealed, hidden aspect of Nebuchadnezzar. Whereas Geb is the physical manifestation of things. It is the world itself. One contrasts the other. You cannot have one without the other. I hope you begin to see what I mean here. So let's move on. We then have Alset or Isis, and then Osir or Osiris. Alset is the ego. She is the focus or the seat of the ego in man, him or herself. Whereas Osir is a focus on the spiritual being, the spirit. One is the physical, and the other one is the metaphysical, the spirit. And we see this in the story of Asar and Aset, how they are husband and wife, brother and sister. That's the relationship our ancestors gave them to point out that there is a reliance upon one another. That's very important. Incidentally, this is where we also get the Trinity, where we have Osir, Aset, and Haru, which would be the Immaculate Conception and the birth of baby Jesus. And we can see this image of Aset nursing Haru. She had an Immaculate Conception and gave birth to Jesus. This is where the original story of Jesus came from and was plagiarized by the Christian Church in 325 AD by the Roman Emperor Constantine. Let's go on. Here we can see, for example, the goddess Heteru or Hathor. And here on the tree, she is directly opposite of Sekert. Now, Heteru is the goddess of joy, of love, of harmony. She deals with the imagination. Whereas Sekert deals with spiritual pursuits, not looking at whether things are beautiful, not focusing on joy. So Sekert looks internally, whereas Heteru looks externally. She is congregative in thinking, trying to bring things together to see how they can work harmoniously. Well, Sekert doesn't care about those. Sekert cares about spiritual pursuits, things that are more so focused on spiritual development and the internal development. This is why Qesankh is often said to be dead to things of the world. Because she doesn't care about worldly possessions. Whereas Heteru, she's all about that, making sure that everything looks beautiful. All right, let's go on. We have Sebek here. Sebek is the left brain thinking that we spoke about earlier. He deals with the segregative thought process, facts, figures, and belief. And you see him directly opposite of Tahuti, or Jehuti, or thought, who is wisdom. He intuits truth, knowledge, whereas Sebek learns from books. He is schooled through book learning, research. Tahuti intuits knowledge and wisdom. He accesses the Akashic records. And because these are faculties within you, you have access to both. And both are important to the whole. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that great? Now, we have other relationships here that you can take a look at. For example, we have Maat. And you must understand that even though Maat is the law means nothing if you don't have the ability to enforce it. So you need Harukuhudi, God of divine justice, who comes in ready to do battle on your behalf, to enforce Ma'at's law. That's very important. Very, very important. And one of the things here I want to point that's in the middle is the sixth sphere is Haru, circumspection. Haru looks here at the governing body, which we call the celestial government, before taking action. And in the story of Aser and Aset, Haru went to Tahuti to gain wisdom, or his third eye, in order to beat Set. And Set, we know, is your emotions. You're battling your emotions. So these are the relationships that you need to take into consideration. You can't start focusing on one faculty or deity without the reliance of the other. You must incorporate the other. This is why this tree of life was developed by our ancestors, to show you the cosmological framework, the cosmological thinking of how these deities work harmoniously and work together. You see what I'm saying? And that is important if we are going to develop spiritually as a people. Because to start adapting the Kemetic spiritual tradition from a Western perspective, meaning you're going to take this and start looking at the deities as single isolated frameworks and just teach from that perspective, then you're going to miss the entire point of what our ancestors were trying to do in building their society. This is exactly the problem we're dealing with in today's modern world. The reliance on one modality of thought, of thinking, of left brain thinking, of just the taking of one deity, worshiping of that deity, as if that's the end all and be all of the Kemetic spiritual tradition. No, you have to look at all of the gods, all of the deities. This is why we say the Amen is the one that comes as the many, and the many comes as the one. This is why when you have people who want to belittle our spiritual tradition, to call it, well, you believe in that polytheistic religion. And to that, I have to say, no, I don't. And I don't subscribe to your labeling and defining of things, which is a Sebek trait, to label and define something. Because when you have left brain and right brain thinking, then you understand how the many can come as the one, and the one is the many. And there's no contradiction in your mind because of that right brain thinking, that synthesis thinking, versus how Western society is built, where all they can see is segregative thought. So naturally, they'll come and say, polytheism is wrong. It's against God. No, it's your erroneous way of thinking that's corrupting the way our ancestors put together and created their spiritual tradition. This is why when you have Egyptologists, historians, come and read the sacred Metu Neter, they can't divorce that from their own prejudice and thinking. So whereas in the Christian religion, when they're reading the Bible, they call certain things verses or psalms. But when we're reading the Book of the Dead, the Port Hamalu, they call them spells. You see? And that is indicative of a prejudicial way of thinking. So let us now start looking at the tree of life, the different gods or faculties, however you want to call them, in terms of relational thinking or cosmological thinking. I hope this message resonates with you. This is Qesankh Maat Keparu, son of Maat and Tahuti. My aunt is the beautiful goddess Hedaru. Until our next video, Amen Ra.